Welcome to the Music Reel. I'm your host, Nicola Burton. My guest today is Karen Harding, who is the director and the founder of Sounds on the Couch. It's very nice to meet you today, Karen. How are you going?
Thank you so much. I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's
It is
amazing
a
what you're doing
pleasure.
here.
Oh, thank you. Now, first of all, let's start with where are you talking to me from?
Absolutely. So I'm in lockdown in Melbourne, hopefully not for much longer.
Right. Is
Yeah.
the mood a little bit more optimistic down there at the moment?
Yeah, so at the moment, we've had a little bit of an extension. So we're going up to 25 kilometres now, which is 5 times what we had before. On top of that, the weather's getting so much better. So that naturally makes everyone feel so much better.
Good to hear. Look, we've all been thinking about you guys for the last few months. We're sorry that you've had to go through this, but it's good that you're almost through it. So well done.
No,
Well, let's
thank you
start
so
with
much.
you. I have been amazed, and you're probably the same in 2020 since March, how many extraordinary people have emerged just from nowhere
Oh,
who are
yeah.
just doing these incredible initiatives. And yours is one of them, Sounds on the Couch. So let's start with that. How did this happen? How did this idea come about? And what's the response been so far? And where would you like to take it in the next few years?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, Sounds on the Couch really just started from a random idea. I'm very much an ideas person. I woke up one morning and I went, we're in the middle of this COVID that's developing. I just want to create an opportunity for musicians. So I'm a musician myself, and I was just looking for a way to get them out there to perform when they couldn't perform live. Um, so I was kind of thinking at that time that it would last maybe a few weeks. It'd be a bit of fun, see what happens. But I tend to get obsessed with things. So that happened. And I was seeing how much of an impact it was having getting musicians out there. So I wanted to create more value. So initially it was a live performance every Saturday night with 3 artists performing each week. And then that got built up to 2 a week. So there's one on Wednesday nights as well. Then I was looking for ways to develop more value and more tools for particularly emerging and independent artists. So I started doing interviews. I started interviewing artists themselves and experts in the field that could give valuable information for artists to develop their careers. So things like marketing, things like songwriting, copyrights, all of that kind of thing that can help them to progress. And then it's developed even further. So from there, we've started an online mag, which creates that value as well, but in a different format. So it attracts different people that learn in that kind of way. And then this morning, we released a podcast as well with interviews as well to help artists to develop further. So that's sort of where we're at the moment. In the future, I'm looking at putting together some workshops and things to really be able to create some better value, something that's a bit more in depth. Hopefully we don't go through something like this again, but people need to be ready in their mindset and in their approach to things to be able to get through anything that they face. And I think that we need more accessible information around there. So that's sort of the direction I'm thinking about going.
Beautiful.
But we'll see what happens.
Oh, Karen, it is much needed because we've got, I think it's close to 50 peak bodies in this industry. There's a lot of resource out there, but it's very hard to navigate your way through it. So an enterprise like yours is much needed because you've combined all of the information in that one place. And
Yeah.
look, emerging artists will just really get so much value from what you're doing. And I'm not sure if you've seen in the UK, there's the government, which is insane, are doing these ads saying you need to forget about being an arts worker and go and get a real job. And people are just losing their shit over it, understandably. But in all fairness, we do need to diversify. We do need to future-proof. So given that you're doing these workshops, what are your thoughts on what we can do as an industry to make sure that, look, if this does happen again, and it may, how we as an industry can actually pivot quickly and survive until we get out of lockdown again? What are your thoughts?
I think probably the biggest thing is understanding that musicians are a business in themselves, and they need to learn the skills around that. And in any kind of business, when you're thrown any kind of curveball, you have to then work out how you're going to maneuver around that, whether that's something like COVID or whether it's, a stock downturn or something. But, whatever it is, you have to kind of be able to move. And so it's about learning what's around, what's accessible, what the needs are at that time, and being able to move in that direction.
No, it's so true. But, we all have to sort of, I guess, really take ourselves out of our comfort zones this year. We've really learned that, okay, things are not the way we thought they were going to be. But look, you're a musician and you're working a lot with emerging artists. And I've watched a lot of the interviews that you've actually done in the last couple of months. So I'm curious to get your thoughts, Karen, on how everyone's feeling about the impact that this has had on not just their businesses, but I guess their lifestyles and also their mental health, how they see themselves as a musician when there's so much uncertainty. How do you move towards something that light is no longer there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, there's been a big mix. So you've got, like what you said before, all these amazing people coming out of the woodworks. Like, some are really grasping the opportunity and looking for other options. But there's also a huge volume of musicians that have been really heavily affected. I mean, if they can't do the work that they generally do to earn their living, I mean, that affects their mindset in itself, because they can't go and, if they can't pay their rent, that's challenging, So I think it's about learning to go, okay, there's other options. We can look at, for now, we can't do live gigs, but it's teaching them how to say, okay, well, maybe I can develop something that helps other musicians, or maybe I can do some teaching, or maybe I can, it's those skills, but then also it's the mindset of believing that they can do those things. And I think that's probably the hardest step for people to take. It's believing that you're good enough to do it, believing that you have the skills to do that, believing that you can go and stand in front of people and show them how to do the skill that you go out and do every day. And I think that's probably the most difficult thing.
You've just hit on this extraordinary part of being a musician, right? To go up on stage and expose yourself in front of all these people, make yourself so vulnerable. It takes so much courage, doesn't it? So much self-belief. So if you can already do that, imagine how, if you can move that courage into another area to do something different. So I think musicians have actually got the ability to transfer their skills probably a lot easier than a lot of other people, just by the fact of what they actually do naturally. So we're probably already in a good situation to be able to pivot. But I guess a lot of people are really talking about government assistance. So let's talk about this little elephant in the room, because, there's a lot of talk about, so the Australian Live Music Business Council announced recently that without government assistance, 70% of music industry businesses will be gone by Christmas. That's enormous. Then a Live Entertainment Industry Forum announced last week a potential 79,000 jobs will be gone by the end of the year without government stepping in. And I think there's a bit of consternation about, well, JobKeeper is starting to reduce, but musicians still can't go out there and work. And Josh Frydenberg said, well, we can't save every business. So there's a bit of a disjuncture there. What are your thoughts on what the government's response has been so far? And what do you think they need to do to perhaps consider the extraordinary circumstances of our industry?
Yeah, look, it's really challenging, because if they hadn't have stepped in, obviously a lot of businesses, whether it's in music or it's in general, they already would be in a lot worse situation than what they're in. I actually work in the accounting industry when I'm not doing Sounds on the Couch. And we do talk a lot about when JobKeeper is taken away, we've got these dormant companies that, when JobKeeper is taken away, what happens then? And it is a really scary prospect. It's tricky because what do I say?
Anything, because I mean, you know this industry better than anyone, and as an accountant, the numbers are going to be doing the talking for you. What do you think is an appropriate response? Do you think that the government are actually? I mean, thank God they've done JobKeeper. Thank goodness.
Oh
Do you
yeah.
think there should be anything additional that they should do for our industry, given that we actually can't go back to work yet?
Definitely. And I know they have there's been a number of grants and things that have come out. I know there was one for Victoria that finished yesterday, I think it was, for musicians themselves to create more work, get more education and things like that. I'm not sure if there's been something similar in other states. But yeah, I think they definitely need to look a lot more closely at how at least they come off the JobKeeper. Whether particularly for the music industry and industries that do get really hard, hit really hard. I think for the music industry with live performance, it's really difficult in the sense of, yes, like it's hard to get back to the work and the live performing, but as well as them being hit, live venues have been hit really hard. And so there are a lot of live venues that may not be able to come back in the same capacity that they were. And so that makes it more challenging for musicians as well, because they need the access to those venues to be able to perform. So I think longer term, it could be more challenging. So yeah, I think honestly, there needs to be a response to that from the government.
Well, Karen, you have been a lovely voice, positive voice of reason, and you've added a great perspective to this conversation that the Music Reel has been having for the last 7 months. So I'm so grateful for your chat today. Everyone who's watching, please check out Sounds on the Couch, watch the interviews, watch the podcast, engage with Karen online. We need more of these kind of projects to keep everyone connected to our industry. Karen Harding, I'm so grateful to talking to you today. Best of luck. Looking forward to a good lockdown end for you. Yes. And I hope I talk to you next time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.